Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Thursday, September 25th, after the Toronto Blue Jays AL East Division lead has in essence shrunk to one game, thank you to the tiebreaker. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter, and we are joined today by a host and producer at the Fan 590 and a frequent host of Jays Talk. It is Sho Alli. Sho, thanks so much for taking the time to do this today.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Who would have thought? I definitely thought if we were doing this like a week ago, we'd be talking about the American League East being all locked up and, with what, now 4 games to go as the time of recording, it's a little up in the air now.
It's funny because looking back, the last time we had you on this season was right after Vladdy didn't sign after his extension deadline. So, I guess essentially you are our panic guy now at this point. We're gonna have to have you on whenever, for lack of a better term, crap hits the fan.
Yeah, it's been pretty weird season, right? I mean, I think if you look at the record for the Blue Jays, I think from the beginning of this season to about late May, they're a game over 500. From late May to, about a week ago, or yeah, maybe a little before that, they are well above 500. And then from the beginning of August to now, they're about 500. So it's an interesting tale of what has essentially been 3 separate seasons for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, they've been everything from the best team in baseball to whatever's going on right now. And I guess the million-dollar question is, how freaked out are you? How concerned are you about how things have unfolded over the last week?
It's funny because we've been having this conversation a lot in the newsroom, and I think the concern level varies for a lot of our colleagues, essentially from not concerned, they'll pick it up. This is not the team they have been for most of the year. So even if they're going through the slump at the worst possible time, while the Yankees are not slumping, essentially, they have not proven to be this over the course of a long chunk of the season. Having said that, we have not exactly seen a lot of signs that the offense is going to suddenly turn it around, right? So I would say I'm like moderately concerned, right? I mean, Brian Bayo's pitching tonight, and this take might age like curdled milk, but he has been a little hittable, at least in the last 2, 3 games, even if he has had a very, very phenomenal season. So, you have some hope there. The Rays, I mean, it was really interesting. I don't know if you guys saw the Rays Orioles game yesterday, but Shane Baz pitched yesterday, and he got pulled from that game after just 49 pitches in 4 innings. So I don't know if the Rays are just managing innings down the stretch here because it doesn't matter for them, right? So if that's the case, then I'm sure all those things will play a factor. But I am moderately concerned. I would be lying if I said I wasn't concerned at all.
It's super interesting, especially, the way that, the rotation has kind of unfolded here with Bassett going on the IL, Barrios moving to the bullpen, and then, obviously them having to restructure it with Bieber being moved from Thursday's game to Friday game, and now they have kind of a bullpen game lined up for today. I wonder kind of, in the grand scheme of things too, and with Scherzer kind of having another shaky one last night, the offense has kind of gotten some of the headlines for the struggles recently, but, kind of having some uncertainty in the rotation, which they haven't had for a few months. How do you think that's kind of contributed to this?
Yeah, it's funny that they've gone from we had all these conversations about a 6-man rotation, and now it's kind of like a 3.5-man rotation in the span of like a couple weeks. Yeah, I thought that Bieber move was interesting. Certainly, I'm sure at least a part of it is this is a guy coming off Tommy John surgery. They're managing him to a certain extent, but I also wonder how much of Bieber and Savage to a lesser degree, that whole aspect of them not pitching against the Red Sox is tied into them specifically facing Boston, because there's a really good chance that they're hedging their bets. Not that they're necessarily giving up on the division, but that they are planning for a contingency scenario in which they will face the Red Sox and therefore will be required to throw Bieber in game 2 or game 3. Maybe a Savage pitches game 2 at this point. Like, I do wonder what that looks like, because I guess you want to avoid having Gosman, Bieber, Savage all pitch against the same team in the span of a week. And I guess you can make that argument for the Red Sox as well, but they don't really have a choice, right? Those guys will be arrested. And I mean, no matter who they face, they're going to throw out Garrett Crochet in game 1 if they can help it. Like, it doesn't matter who the other team is, whereas the Blue Jays kind of have to finesse it to a certain extent. But I'm with you. I mean, like, I'm sure sure if they could go back and I mean, I guess we could debate whether or not the injury for Bassett is a legitimate one or if they were trying to just give him some rest. I mean, we don't know about this whole lower back inflammation thing, but I think there's a real possibility they could, if they could undo that one and maybe have Barrios be the one go to the IL or just not have an IL stint in the first place, I'm sure they would undo it at this point.
And not to mention as well, like you kind of were getting at before, the Scherzer stuff. He's struggling so immensely right now as well, and he's potentially lined up to pitch a playoff game. Which I
Oof.
don't know about you, but the level of comfort there is almost non-existent. So, how would you kind of organize this? What machinations do you think the Jays could even make to kind of avoid a situation like that?
I know because we're looking down the barrel of the last four games, and today, which is Thursday, is a bullpen game. We know Varland is opening for the team. I gotta think. I mean, Barrios pitched a little bit yesterday. Schneider said in his post game that he was not going to be in the mix for the Thursday game. So if that's the case, I have to think Eric Lauer pitches a couple innings, the very least today. I mean, he hasn't thrown 50 plus pitches in what feels like forever, essentially. So I'm sure he's not going to pitch the whole game, but in terms of a starter's workload, but I'm sure we'll see him in some capacity. But if that is the case and Bieber starts Friday, I mean, it does feel like they're kind of cobbling it together as we go here because the magic number as of the time of this discussion is still at 4 for the division. So there's a really good chance they might have to deploy Kevin Gosman on Saturday or Sunday. And if that's the case, I'm actually not sure how you line it up for the playoffs. I mean, I forgot how the rules work with the IL and playoff baseball because in theory you could bring Bassett back and have him pitch a game at the Rogers Center and if you think you'd feel pretty good about that, but you could have him pitch game 2, let's say. But I am curious how that will work out if you can't balance the rotation as, you know, finally perhaps as you had hoped because right now it does feel like things are going to be a little out of focus for the playoffs.
Yeah, everything kind of, was set in the ALDS basket. I think that's pretty safe to say, and I'm sure they obviously didn't account on losing whatever is it, like six of their last seven, five of their last six, and I wonder, kind of going forward. I mean, for Scherzer specifically, last night, I think, obviously couldn't have gotten much worse than the Royals start. But where do you kind of have, like, what would your confidence level be with him? Like, I don't think you're leaving Max Scherzer off your playoff roster. So where do you kind of think that he would line up, whether it be, in wild card or in ALDS?
See, because I think you could leave him off a playoff roster, but only if your option to replace him was a lot better. And I'm sure not sure that's the case. And I know it's your point, Zach, because like let's say Bo was for sure going to return for round one of the playoffs, then I think you could finesse it in a way where Scherzer's not in your playoff roster, right? But it doesn't really sound like Bo is going to be back in time for the at least for the wild card series. And I think that's also a reason why there's so much consternation about them even having to play in a wildcard series. Because ultimately, if you're playing in an ALDS, you get some time off. Some of these guys like Bassett and so on, you don't have to rush back. And Bo has a better chance of playing, right? But if you're playing in an AL wildcard series, I would be pretty surprised if Bo played in that series at this point. So I think you'd have to put Scherzer. It's just I'm not really sure what scenario I would feel comfortable putting Scherzer into a game, right? I mean, because the big thing with him is that he has had the one bad inning essentially in every start this season. And I mean, there have been some starts where they've been able to overcome that. He's given up like a solo home run. It doesn't really mean as much. He struck out anywhere from 8 to 11 batters or whatever it is. And he's looked pretty good. And you can kind of navigate some of those cheapy home runs. But there have been some moments where that cheapy home run is like a 3-run bomb into the seats. And the Blue Jays, with the bats, the way they've been going, have been unable to overcome. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if it was up to me, I might honestly not even put Scherzer in a playoff roster. But again, it really does depend on what happens on Saturday and Sunday because you might need him and you don't really have a lot of other really great options.
Yeah, they're kind of in a pickle here. And the problem is, like he said, there's just a lack of just options overall, the Bassett injury, obviously, the Barrios struggles, and now kicking into the bullpen. Lauer, it seems like they're done with stretching him out. So it's a matter of a lack of options, which is so shocking because it felt for a while there like they had about seven options for the rotation.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. Like the bizarre part of the Lauer of it all, I think has gotten to a lot of people because for so much of the season, Lauer was that great story, right? Like this is something the three of us have talked before, but when I think for sports, not just in baseball, but for all professional sports, if you have championship aspirations, you kind of need your stars to be your stars. Like you have to have the expected production from the places you need it. So Bo has been that. There have been some great bounce backs, certainly as well, like a Kirk and a Springer. And I know a lot of this has fallen off in the last 7 games or so, but just generally over the course of the whole season, I think that's definitely been true. Vladdy's had a pretty good season, even if his ABs have dried up recently. But you look at some of the other stories. I mean, Brendan Little in the early part of the season, he was really great. I mean, he was so good before the All-Star break. We thought maybe he'd be the lone Blue Jays representative at the All-Star game, and he's not even a closer, right? That's how good Brendan Little was early in the season. We were talking about John Schneider being manager of the year. Again, George Springer having the bounce back at age 35, 36 was not something anyone really expected. And then I would say the next biggest story has kind of been Eric Lauer, right? I mean, this is a guy who spent time in Korea, and now all of a sudden he kind of got taken out of the rotation through no real fault of his own. Like it was all circumstance. And then he kind of just disappeared for a while. So, yeah, I mean, the Blue Jays don't really have a choice right now. They kind of need to go back to him again, probably tonight, Thursday. But yeah, I mean, that's a bizarre one because if it was up to me, I would have kept him stretched out and maybe kept him as an option for the team in a potential wildcard series. But it doesn't really feel like the wildcard series is something they had at the very top of their mind until the last like week, for example.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating to see how the pitching plays out. Obviously, a lot riding on the weekend, but on the offensive side, I mean, one thing that we did see last night was the return of Anthony Santander, and obviously he goes hitless, but he does kind of have the one hard hit ball at the end of the game that maybe gives you a little bit of hope. As far as his return goes, I don't think we have to take much away from his game last night. But what kind of impact do you think that he can kind of provide for this lineup? And do you think that this is a guy that they're going to be running out in the middle of their lineup in the postseason?
I mean, they kind of have to, right? Especially if Bo is not going to be ready. Because if Bo was ready and you felt reasonably confident about Anthony Santander, you could have put Santander, let's say, in the two hole even, and then have Bo back clean up and then figure out how you want to deploy the five hole. But of course, without Bo, and I don't think Santander is going to right away bat cleanup. But I do wonder if they start him off in the five hole and then kind of see what kind of production they're getting out of the two hole. Because I think since the beginning of September or the end of August, the production they've gotten from the two hole as a spot, not even just from one guy, right? Whether the two hole has been occupied by David Schneider, by Nathan Lucas. I think a couple times Barger's been up there, and then he's kind of been batting cleanup or batting fifth after that for a certain extent. But I think the OPS went from like mid 800s to like 500 to 600 essentially over the course of the month of September. So if that's the case, you really need another option, especially if he could bat left, and that was the side of the plate he was reported to be batting better from, I guess. So if that's the case, then you could put a lefty Santander in the two hole. But I mean, I don't think they really have a choice at this point. Like they're so desperate for offense that they need to put their most credible power threats in the best possible situation. Varsho had a turn in the two hole as well, and I'm not sure that's looked particularly great. So yeah, I mean, I think in these next 4 games, you're probably going to see Santander there, and when the playoffs roll around, he's got to be in the playoff lineup at this point.
Yeah, and then of course the big, elephant in the room or whatever you want to say is Vlad
Yeah.
has gone completely dormant. And for the Jays, it's obviously coming at perhaps the worst possible time. But what's your concern on Vlad? And do you think he's a guy that can get out of this by the time the playoffs roll around?
Yeah, you know what? I am concerned about Vladdy only because he looks like whatever is bothering him is, I mean, certainly he has a very pretty swing. He needs to be a little less late on a lot of these things, but just generally speaking, whatever's bothering Vladdy looks like it's mental. Like it doesn't really look like he's dealing with some kind of injury. Like I don't think he has like an oblique strain or he fractured a finger and he's dealing with it. I'm sure to a certain extent the hamstring strain has not fully healed because I don't know if you guys ever pulled a hamstring. I've pulled hamstrings doing very normal things, and that has not healed for several months. And Vladdy only did that what like a month or and a bit ago. So I'm confident he is not 100%, but then again, and we've heard Gosman and Bassett and these guys talk about it, but like no one's in any sport is 100% this late into a season, right? So that's something that everyone has to deal with. But yeah, I think they just need Vladdy to step up. Again, to go back to the bow of it all, if you don't have your stars, you need the other stars to perform like it. And I'll give George Springer some credit. He has, amidst this slump, he has continued to largely look like himself. Like he's putting good swings on the ball. He's getting on base for the most part. And again, in a stretch where like in 6 of 7 games, they've scored 2 or fewer runs or whatever, everyone's kind of at fault. But you need more from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's so interesting too, right? Because I think we're in also in a midst, even going back to last year, and we think we all objectively agree that it was a very good season. I think we are all kind of reimagining what Vladdy is to a certain extent as a player. And I think it does hurt a little bit from like a public perception point when the Yankees game ends with Judge socking his second of 2 home runs. And then the Mariners game ends with the Mariners clinching their division for the first time in like 24 years, largely thanks to Cal Raleigh hitting his 60th home run of the season. So I think you think to yourself, like, oh, well, why can't Vladdy do that? Or it's like Shohei Ohtani pitches 5 scoreless and hits his 51st home run of the season, right? Like, I think there's like this thought of, well, if those guys are doing it, Vladdy has done that before. Why can't he do it? And I think the truth is, minor league ballparks aside, the 2021 home run total for Vladdy might end up being the outlier when it's all said and done. Like he might end up being a guy who hits the ball really hard, has great contact ability skills, right? Bats are at or around 300 for the most case of a season, and probably is a 25 to 30 home run hitter when it's all said and done, right? And I think that's an elite player, but it's not an elite power hitter. And I think those two things
Yeah.
might not be the same for Vladdy.
I think that's a great point for sure. What did you make of the ejection last night?
Oh my gosh, he was I think he was frustrated, and I do kind of think he was trying to get run to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, no one goes to these games to see the umpire, right? Like I also thought even if he was trying to get run, it was a quick hook, right? Like it was a very, very quick trigger. And then you saw, I mean, I think John Schneider was also trying to get run, frankly.
Yeah.
Then they basically refused to throw him out, and then they had to throw out David Popkins because he was just like cussing the umpires from the dugout, which was
I
really funny.
I loved on
And
that it
then
was like after the pitch to Kirk, which is like basically right down the middle, and it was like, well, I don't like obviously he's just arguing for the sake of arguing, but it was
yeah,
like just the
yeah.
optics was funny.
Yeah, I had to admit, you might as well. I've always thought if you're going to get ejected, you might as well get your money's worth, right? And we have seen John Schneider do it, and Vladdy didn't really. So I'm glad someone in David Popkins got their money's worth, but that was pretty funny. I also thought Miles Straw was also
Yeah.
trying to get ejected, and like the umpire just ignored him. I think they didn't want any part of that, but yeah, what a bizarre ending to the season. Like between the I'm not saying the fix is in by any means, but between the fan interference call in Tampa, the catch that apparently wasn't a catch in Kansas City, and then Vladdy getting ejected, and then what last night or a couple nights ago, the Springer fair ball that was apparently foul, and then the strike three in that same AB. It's just been a bizarre like week of umpire interactions, I have to say.
Well, I mean, I was just about to bring that up is all these, I don't know. I don't want to call them coincidences. I don't want to sound like a nutcase. I don't want to put the tinfoil hat on. But I will say it hasn't been great. I do want to ask a little bit about the Schneider kind of situation more? And are you concerned that he didn't get rung in terms of, do you really think it was just the ump just wasn't going to give it to him? Because to me, I was kind of a little bit, maybe weary is the word, or I don't know if perturbed might be a little strong, but Vladdy gets tossed. I think that you'd like to see Schneider stick up for his guys a little more.
I see. So you think that Schneider should have been more demonstrative,
I
basically.
think so. I mean, I like what Popkins did. I think giving it to the ump there was the right thing to do. And I just don't know if it's just not Schneider's nature to necessarily get to that level, or if he was trying to kind of keep himself in the game. It just, to me, something about that felt a little not quite right.
On one hand, I do agree because when it's a quick hook for players like that, especially for your star player, like, can you imagine the reaction if in this exact scenario, Aaron Judge got tossed from a game and then Aaron Boone like didn't throw his gum into the crowd and like didn't just ream the umpire right then and there, like he would, right? And most managers would. I do think maybe Schneider could have been more demonstrative, but I also think based on his post game commentary last night, one of the things he said, because someone asked him about the Vladdy ejection and then like what do you think of the umpiring, and he's been asked a lot about the umpiring in the last week in his post game availabilities, and one of the things he said, which I thought was really striking, was that, like, first of all, guys, we're not being screwed by the umpires. It has nothing to do with umpires. We're not scoring enough runs. So part of me kind of wonders if he is kind of a little fed up with the offensive performance because, we talk about David Popkins and Hunter Benson, all these guys who help them get prepared for games. But at the same time, Don Mattingly and everyone else who's involved. But at the same time, they can only prepare these guys so much for swinging a stick at the plate. So maybe it's again, this is might be reading way too much into it, but I mean, I do wonder if a part of it is, he wants to see the team perform better. And I mean, maybe David Popkins decided to be that sacrificial lamb to try and fire guys up because he's been so effective for them off the field this year. But yeah, it was a weird one. Like, no question. It was a really weird one.
It'll never be weird when umpires, kind of insert themselves into games.
Right.
And I think, it's true that Vladdy kind of brought it up hot, like, when you kind of make the motion, like basically kind of like drawing a line, but without drawing a line, it's, one of those things. But in the middle of a division race, you would hope that the umpires have a little bit more self-control.
Yeah.
This episode of the Bird's Eye View podcast is brought to you by BioSteel. Use code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order at biosteel.ca. Again, that's code Bird's Eye View at checkout for 20% off your order. For all your high performance hydration needs, visit biosteel.ca. Thank you again to BioSteel for sponsoring today's episode.
I want to go back to the offense a little bit because it has kind of struggled and it's been pretty much everybody except for George Springer that's kind of been a part of this, and it's just such a weird time for them to kind of have this, everybody struggling at once. Like there isn't really anybody that's going right now. They've been so good this year, so I mean you kind of feel like there is a path out of it, but what have you seen from their at bats, and what do you kind of think that they need to do to kind of get back to the identity that they had early on?
It's funny because this is a team that has been pretty aggressive all year, right? And I think there's this idea that they're a very patient team. And I guess they're patient in the sense that they will swing at what they feel like is a hittable pitch. And what, like, when they went through that stretch post All-Star break where they faced, and then trying to think, it was Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Justin Verlander, Max Fried was in there, Carlos Rodon, who has been phenomenal in the month of September. He was in there. There was a couple other guys. Oh, Tarek Skubal was in that stretch as well, and they won all of those games largely by getting to the starting pitching. Like it wasn't like they outlasted the starter and then had to work off the bullpen. I guess they kind of did that with Skubal to a certain extent, but they just worked him for so many pitches. He ended up exiting in like the fifth inning, for example. So yeah, I think you have seen them do it against these great pitchers, but when they were doing it then, it did feel like they were taking even just a few more pitches. And I mean, to go back to the Garrett Crochet game, they were swinging at everything. Like Crochet threw 5 innings, had thrown like 50 something pitches essentially, right? Like he cruised to that game pretty much without any rancor. Like I think he gave up like 3 hits over the course of 8 innings, which is insane, right? For a team that I think their calling card, apart from defense, has been putting the ball in play, making the defense work, making the pitcher work, and making sure that you're putting pressure on the opposing team at all times. And I don't think we've really seen them do it. And I mean, forget Garrett Crochet for a second. We didn't really see them do it against Shane Baz or Ian Seymour, who I thought, to be fair, was quite good. But, you can only tip your cap to the opposing pitcher to a certain extent before you're kind of letting yourself off the hook. So I want to see them get back to that approach. And it was interesting because, and again, Peyton Tolle is a different guy. He's a rookie. He was in there in a blowout at the very end of a game for a Red Sox appearance that they were going to win, no question. But at the end of that game last night, I actually thought we did kind of see that to a
Yeah.
certain extent. So not to like read too much into a silver lining of a game they lost like 7-1, and that ended in a 9-3 putout, which you like basically never see. You like it when Jose Bautista is doing it to guys, not when it's like Willier or Bray or whatever. But yeah, I think you want to see them get back to that approach.
Yeah, definitely. The first thing, as soon as Kirk got thrown out, immediately went to Joey Bats throwing out Billy Butler against the Royals. I want to ask you about the timing of it all because we're right on the doorstep of October and the offense has shut down. Does the timing concern you?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough time to go through your effectively worst slump of the year. I guess in a 162 game season, all teams are going to go through these slumps, right? Like, no question. The Yankees went through that slump. The Red Sox went through that slump. The Dodgers went through a really bad slump midseason where it was kind of like, I don't know what they're doing. They might not even win their division, right? I think the Phillies went through an extended slump at one point. The Brewers felt like they've been largely immune to that, but actually, it's funny since they clinched the playoffs, they've actually been going through a teensy bit of a slump. It just doesn't matter because they had built such a huge cushion for the entirety of the National League. It might not really make a huge difference by the time they get it because they're going to still end up with the bye more than likely. So, I mean, they're doing well for themselves, but all teams go through slumps. It's just what a horrible time for them to get through one of the worst slumps of the season. And it'd be one thing if there was like a clear cut sign they were going to just immediately snap out of it. Like it's not just a wins losses slump, it's that the offense just has gone bone dry from places it largely hasn't been dry all season, like an Ernie Clement or Nathan Lucas or a Davis Schneider or I guess to a lesser extent an Andres Jimenez and a Tyler Heineman. But you've gotten production out of basically all of those guys for the better part of the entirety of the season, right? I mean, this is a team that regularly goes what, like 11 or 12 or even 13 players deep in any one baseball game. And the reason they've done that is because they've gotten production out of those guys while getting great defensive innings from them as well. And you're still getting the decent defensive innings. It's just the offense is dried up. So, I mean, you kind of hope it's not really entirely in their. I mean, I guess it is entirely in the hands if they just win out, I suppose. But if you accept they're gonna go 2-2 or 3-1 over these last 4 games, then you kind of need the Yankees to lose 1 or 2 games, for example, right? Which means that it's not like 100% in their hands. So the best cure is for them to just hit the crap out of Brian Bayo and whoever starts for the Rays from Friday to Sunday, and then you'll be golden. But boy, it's a weird place to be, Jory, because you have not seen this for the vast majority of the season.
Well, as I mentioned off the top, we haven't had you on since since spring training and all the Vlad stuff. For you, being around this team and talking about them almost every single day, post game. I just kind of want to get your opinion on like what has been the most enjoyable part of the season to kind of maybe go out on a more positive note than we've struck throughout the episode. But yeah, what has been kind of the most enjoyable part for you of the season so far?
I think okay, you know what it is. So on Jay's Talk, we take lots of calls and lots of texts. And I love interacting with people, whether it's positive or negative. People always have something to say, and
Yeah.
it's usually something pretty interesting. And everyone has different ideas as to why the team is really good, and in these last 7 games or so, why the team has been really bad, essentially. So, you get run the gamut of opinions. But I do think one of my favorite things this year has been seeing the fan reaction to how good the team has been, especially in that range from what, like the beginning of June to maybe mid-August thereabouts, like in that stretch, because there was a period even after the All-Star break where they looked great too, right? So yeah, maybe in that like time range, give or take a week or two, but in that range, so many people called in and texted in to say, I haven't had this much fun watching the Blue Jays in years. I might be having more fun than watching the 2015, 2016 team. Like, this is a team that reminds me of the 1992, 1993 World Series teams. I haven't had this much fun since 1985. Like, a lot of people making historical comparisons. And yeah, I mean, the last 7 games, I think that sentiment has probably dried up to a certain extent, but no one can take those memories away from both those people and from me, because it has been quite a lot of fun this season. I hope there's more fun to be had, because there's still a chance, as we sit here on a Thursday morning, there's still a really good chance that the Blue Jays play in an ALDS, whether it's because they have to go through the wild card series or they go around it. But they're still, I believe in my heart of hearts, they're the team we mostly saw from June to August, because I just don't think all that evaporates in 7 games, right? So if they can get back to that, even just a little bit, like if they get 80% of the way back to that kind of team we've seen, they're going to play in the ALDS. So it's just a matter of actually seeing it, and it starts tonight against the Red Sox.
Yeah, it'll be it'll be so interesting, and I think it would be a shame for this magical season where they come back from whatever happened last year to be atop the American League, and for it to end early would kind of be a shame. So hopefully they come back and figure it out. One thing that I put on our rundown, which is like not Jays related, but I wanted to get your opinion on, and you brought it up earlier with Judge and Cal Raleigh
Mm.
kind of doing the back and forward thing last night again. Cal getting to 60, Judge continuing what's been just an incredible season. I mean, where are you at on the American League MVP race?
Ooh, that's a great one. You know, I think narrative would give it to Raleigh because, when was the last time a catcher hit 60 home runs? The Mariners clinched the division for the first time in over 2 decades. Like, those things do play with voters, like no question. But if you're asking who's had the better offensive season, I kind of think it's Aaron
Yeah.
Judge. Like, I feel bad to say this because Cal Raleigh's having a phenomenal elite season that is second to only a handful of people. But I think one of those people is Aaron Judge. I mean, you look at Judge's OPS and his WRC plus, and it's just he also missed time with the arm
Yeah.
injury. Like, if not for the arm injury, he might be even closer to 60 home runs. I mean, I think what Judge is like one of 4 people in Major League Baseball ever to have like 4 seasons of 50 home runs or whatever it was. And I think he's only one of 2 people to have back to back 50 home run seasons in Yankees history. And I think the only other person to do it is Babe Ruth. So I don't know. I'd be hard pressed not to give it to Judge. And you know what? I know that this shouldn't have an effect on voting, but if the Yankees win the division, I think
Yeah.
Judge is winning that award. If the Yankees don't win the American League East, I kind of wonder if they will narrative just a little bit push it over the top for Raleigh. But if I was a voter, which I am not, but if I was a voter, I'd give it to Judge.
We've been starved for like an MVP race for so long. It's always
Yeah.
been, for a while it's been Shohei Judge, it's been unanimous MVPs, unanimous Cy Youngs, and it's
How happy do you think Judge and Raleigh are that Shohei is not in the AL anymore?
yeah.
Was
Do you
just
think
about
they're
to
both
say
really
it's
happy?
nice to have something different in the AL.
Yeah.
Yeah, after so many years, I mean, it kind of has set it up for like this Shohei Judge like dynasty of MVPs,
Yeah.
but no, it's yeah, very very good. I think for all the American League teams that Shohei went out west. Sho, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. Appreciate all your insight and always enjoy tuning in and hearing you on the radio during the games, before the games, after the games. It's always great stuff.
Yeah, guys, anytime. And I look forward to the bird's eye view during the playoffs as well.
Thank you. It's fingers crossed it'll be a little more
Nice, yeah.
exciting going forward. So that is Sho Alli, a host producer at the Fan 590 and a host of Jay's Talk and many other shows on 590. You can find him on Twitter at SNSLE. That is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. You can find us there at the Bird's Eye View podcast. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the games this week.